What is the difference between maths, science, and financial education? Financial education is the only one that is not taught at school. This is the single biggest failing of the education system globally, in my opinion. Hardly anybody after they leave school uses maths and science, and yet every single person is going to need to understand financial literacy, financial education, for the sake of managing their personal finances. And yet this is not a requirement in terms of our education. It is truly puzzling. I'm sure when you're done watching this video, you'll be jumping over to the algebra and the chemistry channel next. I'm just kidding. Nobody understands that stuff. Nobody cares. Anyway, welcome to my channel. My name is Matthew, and on my channel I like to talk about growing your career, your income, and your investments. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, consider subscribing to the channel, getting new subscribers all the time. And I just want to say thank you to everybody that has subscribed. I really do appreciate it. The problem with personal finance is that it's entirely self-policing. It's requiring people to understand the consequences of their choices and to manage their finances. It's not like there's a policeman that's going to walk up to the guy in the car dealer saying, excuse me sir, but I've had a look at your pay slips and your bank statements and you can't afford this car, sorry. Or there's nobody walking into the department store saying, excuse me ma'am, you've already got 4 overdue credit cards and 3 clothing accounts. I don't think you need any more shoes. So why does this happen? This happens because we have created a consumer world. Companies have become incredibly good at manipulating people into buying things that they cannot afford or do not need. They prey on our inability to manage our money, and they also prey on our psychology by using phrases like bargains, specials, discounts, occasions, 2-for-1s, anything to convince you that you're getting a good deal is a great trigger or a catalyst for you to buy something that you will use once or probably not at all, or that you genuinely just probably don't need. Companies understand that we as people attach material things to our social circumstances to be accepted into certain social groups, to keep up with our peers. We need to be seen to have certain things. We need to wear certain clothes. We need to drive a certain car. We need to have a certain handbag. We need to have a certain watch. It is a way to keep up perceptions when the reality in the background as to whether or not we can actually afford this stuff almost fades into total insignificance. Social media is incredibly powerful in perpetuating this stigma because you're seen by these influencers and these people to aspire to be what they have. And it creates this pressure and this expectation that we need to have this stuff as well. So they're very clever in the way that they market to you. They say you deserve these things. You need to have these things. You cannot live without these things. This is what's required to fit in. This is what's required to have friends. And so we buy it, whether we can afford to or not. We're also conditioned to want everything right away. My wife says to me, in her opinion, and I quite like this perspective, we live in a disposable, immediate world. So you can have everything right now, and as soon as you've got no need for it anymore, you can just get rid of it. So there is no delayed gratification. Everything is now. We are conditioned to have everything now. And this is a big reason that people have so much debt, because if you can't afford it, it doesn't matter. You just put it on plastic and deny it. 25% of people globally use a budget. The other 75% are just flying blind, where ignorance is bliss. And debt is just a continuous black hole that we are digging ourselves into more and more and more. In May 2020, consumer debt hit $14.3 trillion globally. That is $2,048 of debt for every man, woman, and child on this planet. Just let that sink in for a second. So the possession of something is no longer a symbol of wealth. You can have 2 people driving the same car, wearing the same clothes, living in the same house, that have got substantially different financial circumstances. The one has bought everything that he can afford and has got a positive net worth of $100,000. The other one is living entirely on debt and on borrowed time and has got a negative net worth of minus $100,000. This is the society that we've created. I saw a stat the other day that really surprised me. But amazingly, there are as many people living paycheck to paycheck that earn over $100,000 a year than there are earning $40,000 a year, which shows you that there is no link between income and wealth. What happens is you fall into this access equals affordability trap. So the difference is you can afford something when you have the money to pay for something. You can access something when somebody is willing to lend you money to buy something. So the more our income increases, the more our access increases. So the further in debt we go, and we don't make any progress in terms of building any wealth, because all we're acquiring is materials that are not assets, that are not going to generate us future income. They're just liabilities and things that we will dispose of or stop using in time. So that means that the guy who's earning $40,000 a year but is living within his means is actually richer than the guy that is earning $100,000 a year, because he's got some kind of positive net worth. In other words, where his assets exceed his liabilities. Now, credit card companies can afford to offer attractive reward programs and write off millions of dollars in debts from people that can't pay them, because they know there are billions more where that came from. The whole system is geared to exploit this. The whole system is requiring us as consumers to live beyond our means and to consume more than we produce. Now, 2020 has been a ridiculous year for many reasons. One of them is the stock market, where it is now the S&P 500 is sitting at an all-time high value when economies are under tremendous strain. Now, interestingly enough, the fastest growing stock in Australia at the moment is a company called Afterpay. And they are in a space called the buy now, pay later space. Now, in a year where people should be spending less or trying to cut down on their spending and trying to consolidate because of unemployment and all the challenges that have come with the pandemic, why are companies like this growing? Let's have a look quickly. So this is Afterpay's website. And all it is you buy something and you pay for it in 4 equal monthly installments every 2 weeks. It's like a payment plan, right? So they probably sell it to you for a premium. It looks really attractive. It means you can have access, like I said earlier, to things before you have the money for it. And here's where they catch you. This little piece of fine print right here. They punt themselves as interest-free, but there are no fees when you pay on time. None of us pay on time. The reason for credit card companies and companies like Afterpay growing enormously is that they are banking on people to fail to be able to make their commitments. I'm not bullish on a company like Afterpay because they are going in tremendous amounts of receivables debt and they're going to have huge write-off exposure. But what do I know? Look at their share price. Here's their price in March of this year, $12.44. As I'm speaking to you today, this business is trading at $97.59. This entire company's value is based on what the shareholders think this business can potentially be worth. It's basically a glorified debt company masking itself as a financial technology company. And this entire company's stock is based on profits that it hasn't made yet. Afterpay has only posted losses. But people are so bullish about this stock because it has just diversified into the European and American markets, where they know that the consumption factors are so high that this business, at least in the view of their shareholders, is likely to turn. That is the power of consumer-driven businesses. Businesses that are driven by consumer spending are perceived to be of massive value, particularly when people are going into and selling debt as a part of their service offering. I thought there was a problem with our frame of mind, that we would just consume faster than we can produce. But I don't actually think it's that. I think it's that we feel entitled to consume as much as we'd like to consume, regardless of how much we produce. Like there's a total disconnect. These two tracks are totally divorced from each other. So what I make has got no influence on what I feel I'm entitled to consume because of this variable that is debt. So we live in this world of lawless consumption, where we just constantly want things that we don't have. Our houses are loaded with junk that we don't use. We park our cars outside our houses so that we can fill our garages with stuff. We are literally consuming ourselves out of our homes. Yet if I ask you, why don't you have life insurance? Why don't you have proper car insurance? Why don't you have proper health insurance? Oh no, I can't afford that. Well, the real answer is that's not something I can consume. That's not something I can attach a material value to, so I don't see it as important. Have something happen, have a health shock, have something get stolen, have something get broken, and see what happens when you're living paycheck to paycheck and you don't have these insurances. So many people's house of cards have come down for this exact reason. One day, these spending habits are going to catch up to you. You're going to run out of future self to borrow from. All debt is, and the amount of debt that you've taken out, is the number of future years' prosperity that you've taken from yourself today. So if you're living 5 years out ahead of yourself, 10 years out ahead of yourself, 15 years out ahead of yourself, and you start to shrink the ground beneath your feet. And you know what the most mental part about all of this is? We don't talk about money. Talking about money is this bad thing. We don't talk about money with our friends. We don't talk about money with our family. I don't know if there's this sense of shame, this sense of anxiety, but something that so many people are so bad with, and we are not speaking to each other about it. We're not helping each other with it. It's crazy. It is the most lonely, toxic thing, and it's entirely self-inflicted. Why? This is coming across a bit preachy, and that's not the idea here. But this whole issue boils down to our frame of mind, our attitude towards consumption, our attitude towards spending money, our attitude towards material things. And that's actually what this video is all about. And that is where I want to introduce you to this concept of minimalism. Now, financial minimalism or minimalism, I found a few definitions on Google, and my favorite one was this one. I'll just read it out to you quickly. It means having a balanced lifestyle, knowing where you're at and what's right for you, and being okay with that. It's about having the confidence to push back on traditional expectations if they don't feel right for you, and focusing on what's important, free from social guilt and judgment. This was at the very top of the Google search as to what is financial minimalism. And I think it captures the idea perfectly. If anybody's ever told you financial minimalism is about being cheap, it's not. It's got nothing to do with stopping drinking bottled water or taking a scooter to the library instead of driving a car. That's rubbish. That's not what financial minimalism is about. It's hard to say, but it's not what minimalism is about. Minimalism is a frame of mind. It is changing the way we see consumption and money. Let me go into a bit more detail. It is simply a commitment to produce more than you consume. And I say it that way around on purpose. I don't say consume less than you produce. I say produce more than you consume. Why? Because you don't get rich by saving money. You don't save your way to wealth. You get rich by living where you're at and investing in assets and accumulating assets over the long term. You will be poor if you consume more than you produce and you accumulate liabilities instead of assets. It's that simple. No more, no less complicated than that. So what are some of the key fundamentals of financial minimalism? In the very first word, it says you need to know where you're at. What does that mean? It means understand your spending. Know what you spend. Know what you earn. Understand your money, first and foremost. And the second integral thing of financial minimalism is delayed gratification. You can have nice things. You can have the things that you want, but you cannot necessarily have them all right away. You need to wait until you can afford the things that you want. A minimalist has a fundamentally different relationship with money. You think about it, there's the guy that never has money. Oh, dude, I'm short this month. Can you just stick me for this coffee? And then there's the guy that's always got the money. What is the difference between those two? A minimalist will not buy something that they don't have the money for today. A minimalist has a different definition of value. They will spend money on things that make them happy or things that can make them money. And they will spend money for themselves and nobody else. A minimalist is clever. They use debt to their advantage. Graham Stephan is a great example. He simply leveraged his debt very, very effectively, borrowing money against real estate and renting out the properties. It's not rocket science. He didn't invent the concept. He simply understands financial leveraging and secured lending and has done it incredibly well. That's all it is. Understanding how to make debt work for you. When you can lend money from someone for 3%, and invest that money and make 10%. You can keep the difference. It's as simple as creating good debt, using debt effectively. That is smart money tactics. What is not clever is borrowing money that you don't have at 20%, spending it on something that's not going to make you a cent. That's what consumer debt is all about. That's the problem with the consumption mindset that has sort of possessed the world. That's what the minimalist attitude avoids doing. So I want to tell you a story about me. I don't talk about me too much, but I have sort of unknowingly, I never branded myself as such, but I've always been a minimalist. And I think from a small boy, I knew I was probably a little bit different in terms of my attitude towards money. Because when I was, I think I was about 8 years old, I had a bet with my dad on a sport game. Now I'm 8 years old, so I don't make my own money. So he gave me the money as pocket money, and then I lost the bet and I cried because I was so attached to this money. So from a very young age, I've always been attached to money. I've always been reluctant to part with my money. It's just sort of been in my makeup. And therefore, I always have money. And I realized that was a bit weird or unusual, or this isn't like the normal way of things. When I would spend time with my friends and they would say stuff like, I'd like to buy that, but I don't have money right now. And I'd be like, what do you mean? And they'd be like, well, it's not payday yet. I'd be like, but what do you mean? I always have money. And it creates this perception, and people go, oh, well, you obviously earn much more money than I do. I'm like, no, I just spend much less money than you do, probably. But it's just this, I suppose people are just wired differently. I mean, I always wanted, for me, my dream car was a Honda Civic. And about 10 years ago, I could buy one. I qualified in terms of the car repayment, but I just felt that it was just too much money at the time. I wasn't producing enough to justify something that was that expensive. So I bought something cheaper that I could pay off. And I didn't buy the car that I would consider to be the car of my dreams. And fast forward 10 years later, my wife and I, we've now moved to a new country, and we were looking at a new car for me. And she had to really twist my arm for me to actually do it. But I finally bought the car of my dreams. I finally now have a Honda Civic. And it's so much more sweet, I would say, now, because it was delayed gratification. I didn't get it when I could. I got it when I really could afford it. I bought it cash. I don't owe a cent on it. And I don't say that to gloat. I just say that it feels so much better to own something that's mine. It doesn't belong to anybody else. It's mine. It's my car. And I can just be incredibly chuffed about that. Now, my attitude towards shopping and clothes is ridiculous. Like, when I did a budget video, I left shopping off of the list of things that people spend money on, which is ridiculous. I mean, the average US household spends $1,200 on clothing a month. My wife has to drag me to the shops every 6 months because my clothes are getting holes in it. And she's saying, you cannot go to work looking like this. And I'm not saying you need to be like that. I'm just saying that sometimes it's just in your nature to be a minimalist, to literally only buy the things you want and nothing else. So I didn't know I was a minimalist. It's just who I've been my whole life. Now, you probably know a minimalist. Think about it. Think about that guy or girl that you know. They have the cheap cell phone. They probably have the small car. They have the small apartment that's got like nothing in it. They like to eat and cook themselves. They're comfortable in their own skin. They appear to make good money, but they don't talk about it, and they're not too fazed about it. And they really like their stuff. I think that's the difference between a minimalist and everybody else. You like the things that you have. I've got two things in my house that I really like. That's my flat screen TV and my car. Everything else to me, I only have because it serves some kind of purpose to add value to my life. So yes, I have nice things. And you can have nice things as a minimalist. But nice things, by definition, are things that you really like, and you will use them and value them all the time. Think about the number of things that you bought that you don't use. How can they be nice things if you don't use them, if you don't value them, if you don't need them, if you don't like them? Why did you buy them? A minimalist has all his risk covers, all his insurances, and I promise you he or she is accumulating assets and not liabilities. They're using debt to their advantage. They're building wealth. Well, you'll say to me then, Matthew, what is the link between minimalism and success? I mean, no minimalist that I know of ever achieved anything. Okay, maybe, with the exception of Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein, Michael Bloomberg, Warren Buffett. I'll show you something about Warren Buffett quickly. Warren Buffett is the most famous investor in the world. He started investing from a very young age and eventually founded an institutional investing company called Berkshire Hathaway. And he has built his wealth through mainly investing in the stock market for 60 plus years. Here's a picture of Warren Buffett's car, a 2014 Cadillac XTS worth about $23,000. Previously he drove a 2006 Cadillac. Here's his house. He lives in a fairly modest, look, it's double story, but it's for somebody who has the amount of money he's got. His house is 0.001% of his total wealth. Now take your total wealth now, multiply it by 0.01%, and you'll probably see that that's not very much money. So within the context of his wealth, he doesn't place value in material things. A minimalist mindset is that money is a tool, a means to an end to create value. Minimalists think rich. Rich people are not unicorns that appear on this planet and are mythical, mysterious beings that somehow cheated their way to success and wealth. Rich people think rich. And it's as simple as produce more than you consume and produce money as a tool to add value. Rich people talk about money. Rich people help each other. Rich people strategize together. Rich people associate themselves or surround themselves with like-minded people. Rich thinking people. Now I want to wrap this video up because it's been a bit long. But if you're feeling a bit stuck financially, I think the first thing you need to ask yourself is, ask yourself why you buy the things that you buy. Do you buy it for yourself or do you buy it to impress somebody else? Is it going to make you happy? Is it going to add some value to your life? Is it going to do something that benefits you? Ask yourself if you understand where you're at. Do you understand what you're producing and what you're spending or consuming every month? If not, that's probably the place to start. Can you wait until you can actually afford something? Are you capable of delayed gratification? Or do you just stick it on plastic and close your eyes and hope that someday you're going to be able to pay this all back? Ask yourself if you really need all this. Walk around your house. Look at all the stuff. Look at the stuff that's in boxes. Look at the dust that's sitting on top of those boxes. Do you really need all this stuff? The biggest takeaway from today's video for me is that your frame of mind and your perception towards money and consumption is the most important thing. This is what needs to change. Change your frame of mind from a consumer of stuff to a producer of value, and your personal finances will turn around. I guarantee it. Start to think like a minimalist. Start to think rich. Talk about money. Be sure to like this video if you got value from it. Subscribe for more content like this. I've got some more ideas on how you can put minimalism into practice, so subscribe if you want to check those out, as well as many other income and financial growth ideas. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like, subscribe, stay safe, and thank you for watching.